down and eat a worm. These things were puzzling to this young man who had never seen any ugliness. This preyed on his mind for many years. He continued his training and education. He ultimately married and had a son. Since all these things that he had seen troubled him, at the age of 29, he bade his wife and his son a quiet farewell and left the palace. He wanted to find out why there was so much suffering in the world. To explore these things, he went to different teachers, he went to different seekers, medicants. He suffered all the pain and anguish in order to find out what was the cause of all this suffering. It took him 6 years. So at the age of 35, he was still trying to figure out why there was so much suffering in the world. What could he do to help people with this suffering? He vowed not to move, and he began to meditate under what we now call the Bodhi tree. And he meditated until he finally figured out why there's so much suffering in the world. At this time, he became enlightened and became the Buddha. He was 35 years old. When he figured it out, he went to find suffering exists in the world. Second, the cause of suffering is ignorance. that dull or confuse the mind, and deeds. These are also 5 monks follow 250 precepts. I don't have that list, but I'm sure if you go online or text Google, you'll be able to find it. Another law of Buddhism is the Law of Impermanence. All things are subject to change. And that means one of the concepts of no self. I'm not the same person I was this morning. I am who I am now. I will not be the same person tonight. A flower can bloom in the morning and be wilted and dying in the evening. This 90-degree weather is not going to stay with us forever. It will get cool, and it will be maybe 70 degrees tonight. All things are subject to change. Human beings, rocks, the ocean, light bulbs, they wear out. They do not last forever. I think the community knows what the law of karma is. There are consequences for all our actions. Whatever we do results in consequences. If we do good deeds, we'll enjoy the consequences. If we act with bad behavior, we will suffer those consequences. When things happen to me that I don't understand, I say, what did I do to cause this? If I don't get enough rest, I'm not going to be able to drive safely because I'll be too tired and my mind won't be focused. You have to be conscious of your actions because your actions have consequences. We have to know the law of interdependence, of interconnectedness. We do not exist alone in this world. I am here because of something else. You are here because you got the notice that I was going to speak today, and it would be nice if you showed up. But we depend on so many things to exist in our life. We got nourishment, and we have that nourishment because others have worked to provide that for us. I did my training so I could take care of other people. And my mother took care of me growing up. We depend on other things so that we can exist in the world. Flowers need the sun and water to exist in the world. We are all one, part of everything. We do not exist alone in this world. Other teachings we learn are to be kind to one another, to share with one another, and to understand that there's suffering, and take responsibility to find out why there's suffering and how we can help.
We must know that there are 3 things in life that can't be avoided: birth, illness, and death. We're all born. Everything is born. One cannot go through life without suffering some illness, whether it's a headache, blindness, a bad cold, and ultimately, we are all going to die. I don't know of anybody that has lived forever, although I did notice that there was a woman on TV that lived to be 108. And in Japan, a woman lived to the age of 118. Many teachings over the years have been related that no one knows who lives beyond 100 years. Well, guess what? That lady reached 106. This other woman lived to be 118. Progress is kind of a wonderment, but it's also scary. But we can appreciate that nothing goes on forever. Buddhism arrived in the United States in the late 1800s. Officially, it was known to be introduced at the Parliament of World Religions here in Chicago in 1893, when 3 religious teachers, monks from Asia arrived to introduce Buddhism to the United States. It arrived earlier when workers from China and Japan were brought to the United States and Hawaii, which wasn't a state then, to work in the pineapple and sugarcane fields, and to work on the railroad, to connect the Intercontinental Railroad from the East Coast to the West Coast. With them, they brought their culture, and they brought their Buddhist tradition. Buddhism is a very personal tradition. It's a personal practice. There weren't big cathedrals. There weren't big temples. People brought their symbols, their little mementos, their assistive devices to help them practice. It wasn't until so many of the immigrants had come that they gathered together and wanted their home country to send teachers for them to help them continue their practice. One of the oldest organizations is the Buddhist Churches of America. And now there are temples, centers, churches, institutes, universities, all teaching different forms of Buddhism. Initially, D.T. Suzuki introduced Zen Buddhism to the United States and taught at one of the universities on the East Coast. Following that, the Japanese, the Chinese, the Koreans, the Laotians, the Vietnamese, the Cambodians, when they immigrated, they were immigrants and they were refugees. The Asians from these countries left their home because of the conflicts that occurred when they had suffered with wars and famine. People have come to the United States to find freedom, to be able to practice, to be able to work, to be able to survive when survival in their own country became such a challenge. It was very difficult. And many came with nothing but the clothes on their back. But since Buddhism is a personal practice, many people, once they have a place where they could sleep for protection, feel safe, and shelter, they set up their own little altar. And it's their spot of tranquility. And they have mechanisms to help them practice. Some of the things that I brought are a candle, which is a symbol of enlightenment, a statue of the Buddha, which is a symbol of truth. I have a statue of the Kuan Yin, who is a bodhisattva of compassion. And I have a statue of Horibe. He holds up his hands and is a happy bodhisattva. A bodhisattva is similar to what Christians would call a saint. He's not a superhuman being. The Buddha is not a superhuman being. He's a teacher. Bodhisattvas are individuals that we want to emulate. We want to be like them because of their characteristics, because, of what they've accomplished in the world. The Kuan Yin, there are many stories and fables and legends of the Kuan Yin. This is supposedly a man who transformed into a woman. Excuse me, I know it can be done now, but back then it could not be done. But we all learn tales to ultimately learn a lesson. The Kuan Yin, Avila Toketshavara, or Kanon, is a woman who was giving up enlightenment to help the cries of the world, the compassion to save those and help others become enlightened and be saved. She carries with her a medicine bottle, and she's also depicted in statues with many arms. Many of you have seen this. You need many hands to help those in need, those that need help. Horibe is the bodhisattva that cares for the ill, that cares for children. How many of you have gone to restaurants, Asian restaurants, Chinese, Thai, Cambodian, and seen, he's called the Laughing Buddha, and he's also got a big belly. And people think, I'm gonna rub that belly and I'll have good luck. So you'll see this statue like this, and he always carries goodies in his backpack, carries a big sack because he's got candy and food and goodies for those in need. He's the bodhisattva of children and of travelers. So you see him always with children around him. Many times you'll see the statue sitting with little children climbing around him. There are other bodhisattvas that have characteristics that we strive to emulate. One of the misconceptions for many people who don't understand Buddhism is that we worship the Buddha. and that Buddhists pray to the Buddha. Buddhists do not pray. We do not worship the Buddha. We honor the Buddha. The Buddha is a symbol of truth and enlightenment, just like the American flag is a symbol of the United States. I think the media has also shown misconceptions of Buddhism. When you see the movie The King and I, how many of you have seen it? You haven't seen The King and I? You remember? Where the king of Siam wants the Buddha to make sure that everything goes well with him, and he's bowing in front of it. Buddhists do not pray. Buddhists will honor the Buddha. We will put our hands together because you and I are one, and we will bow, honoring the Buddha. And we think about him and think about his teachings. When we're troubled, when we have big issues confronting us, we need to go and sit in that quiet place where there might be a statue of the Buddha, where there might be a statue of the Kuan Yin, or there might be a statue of Hote, and just sit there and think about, how can I resolve my problem? How can I get over this horrible condition? That's where meditation comes in. Buddhist practice involves meditation, chanting, and a Dharma talk. Every time you go to a Buddhist service, whether it is a Japanese Buddhist service, a Thai Buddhist service, a Korean or Vietnamese Buddhist service, they'll ring the bell. And they'll start chanting. Depending on the tradition, Japanese chanting is very slow and goes like this. Theravada chanting goes very fast and very, very fast, and they chant like this, and you'd think the service is going to be over just like that, but it's a long sutra. Sutras are teachings of the Buddha. They are done in the language of the country of practice. It'll be done in Thai, Cambodian, Laotian, Chinese, or Korean. But the sutras are the teachings of the Buddha. For 500 years, the teachings of the Buddha, it was an oral tradition. Monks who became disciples of the Buddha had to memorize the teachings. Can you imagine? For 500 years, individuals who followed the Buddha memorized. It wasn't until much later that it was documented and written down. It was written by men who compiled the teachings. The teachings are called the Tripitaka, or the three baskets. It's similar to the Bible, the Quran, and the Torah. So they're all teachings, and these were memorized by the monks. Three traditions of Buddhism are determined by the countries where they're practiced. Theravada Buddhism is known as the ancient tradition. and is called the oldest tradition. That's practiced in Thailand, Cambodia, Laos. Mahayana Buddhism is practiced in Japan, China, and Korea, and Vietnam. Vajrayana Buddhism is practiced in Tibet, in Mongolia, and Sri Lanka. The three traditions also carry with them different garb. So after you go to different temples, you will see the teachers dressed in different robes. Some are red, some are saffron, some are yellow, some are maroon. If you go, which is something that everyone should do, you go to different temples, because here in the Metropolitan Chicago area, there are over 75 different Buddhist centers, temples, and churches. I have a very old Buddhist directory that the Buddhist Council made, and it lists all the different traditions. They're located in Chicago and all the suburban areas, Indiana, Michigan, Missouri, Wisconsin, and all the traditions of Buddhism are practiced here in the United States, because people who have come from the other countries settled in an area, got enough funding, and built their own temple, center, church. And because it's the United States, they called it a church. The oldest Buddhist Japanese organization is the Buddhist Churches of America. Well, the Buddha did not have a church in India. He practiced in a forest, and he traveled until the age of 80, spreading his teachings. Buddhism was able to spread all over the world because the teachings of Buddhism did not conflict with any of the practices or the culture of the country that it went into. And Buddhism spread because of alliances. Many, many years ago, conflicts were settled when kings said, okay, I'll send you my daughter and you can have her for a wife. And that formed an alliance. When Asoka sent his daughters to be married to King of Tibet, or somebody in Mongolia, or China sent one of the children to be married someplace else, she brought with her the Buddhist practice, or she brought one of the monks with her so she could continue her practice. We all need help and little aids in order to practice our spiritual tradition. Sometimes we need a teacher. Sometimes we need a book. Sometimes we need the chants. So Buddhism spread all over the world because spirituality and people in need gravitate toward a practice that they can relate to, that they feel that it can help them. I'm going to talk for about another 5 minutes, and then I want to know if any of you have any questions. Monks and nuns make up the monastic order of Buddhism, but Buddhism is also taught by ministers and teachers, universities. They're called ministers, monks, rinpoches, lama, and depending on the country, the honorific title is given to them according to their hierarchy. Some of the Buddhist traditions are centralized back in a homeland country. Others are centralized here in the United States. The ethnic Buddhist temples always go back to their homeland and ask for teachers to be sent. Practitioners go back to their homeland to get ordained. Sadly, the order of nuns in the Buddhist tradition kind of faded away because the powers that be, who were the men and the monks, didn't feel that there were enough nuns to teach nuns how to be nuns. But that's changed, and now many women are able to become nuns and be ordained in other countries besides the Theravada traditional countries. Some go to Sri Lanka, some go to China, and some go to Japan. Different lineages have thrived here in the United States, but many of them, excuse me, have originated in the Asian countries. And they're not all Asian individuals. So they're not white. They have to be some have gone back to learn the language so they could become ordained. We're very fortunate now because every tradition of Buddhism is now practiced here in the United States because everyone has traveled here. I thank you all for your kind attention. Now, I want to know if you have any questions. I left a lot of information out. You can all leave knowing that you think you know everything about Buddhism. No questions? Well, thank you very much. Yes?
Just hang on. I'll get them. Just hang on. I'll get them.
Thank you so much. I was wondering how the teaching tradition works in Buddhism.
I'm sorry?
How the teaching tradition works in Buddhism. The teacher-student relationship.
How does the teaching tradition work in Buddhism? Depending on the school of Buddhism, people learn about Buddhism through attending services. Monks and nuns would travel around the community and give teachings to the community. Now in the United States, people can learn Buddhism by going to a temple, by going to a university. There's the Naropa University in Colorado. There's the Institute of Buddhist Studies in California, in Berkeley. There are different monasteries, abbeys, temples, and churches all over the United States that offer classes now on Buddhism. But families who have small children, they will attend a Sunday school, and children would go Because of the ethnicity of many of the temples, they will learn about their culture as well as the teachings of Buddha. And you learn about that in Sunday school, just as other traditions have Bible studies. Many of the temples now have classes offered during the week for you to attend and learn about different traditions of Buddhism. So if you want to learn about Zen Buddhism, you go to a Zen center or temple. You will talk to the teacher there's an abbess or head of the temple or center, and you can learn from that person. You will learn the practices, the rituals, and the teachings by going for services. You can just sit at the back of a service and see what practitioners do. During a service, a Buddhist service, they will start by ringing the bell and honoring the Buddha, the community, and the teachers. And the teachings. So 3 parts are always part of a service. Buddhist teachings are done by the minister or a guest speaker or a visiting monk. They will give you different lessons, trying to learn the chants. Chanting for everyone is singing together, and you learn them in the language. I started going to Sunday school very, very young, and we learned simple rules of Buddhism, certain precepts, learning how to be kind, learning how to speak properly, learning how to take care of one another. One of the things that we learned as a child, that all young children learn, are to be kind and gentle to every living thing and protect all who are weaker than myself. As we got older, we're chanting in Japanese because that's my ethnicity. And it's okay, but there's a certain point where you say, what am I chanting? What am I saying? So now, because we're in the United States, we recite the sutra in English, and then we chant, and then it has more meaning for us. But the chanting that's done all together, it's done as one group, and that's the sign of oneness for all of us when we chant. If you hear, I remember when I was here, when all the swamis were speaking, and some of them got up and were chanting. It was a beautiful sound. When you hear music, when you hear smooth, melodic tones, it's very comforting, and it brings, for me, it brings peace. And I still would go to a church or a temple and hear a cantor singing. And one of my favorite hymns would be sung in a church. And it gives me personally a sense of peace, and I could sit and smile. So teachings are done at a temple, during a service, and then in Sunday school. Just as in the Hindu tradition, how many young children start reading the Vedas and the long story of Shiva and what happened. That's a little too academic, I think. But learning about stories, learning tales of good overcoming evil and people who are right overcoming the bad things, and how to overcome horrible situations, how working together saves everybody. So very basic teachings are related in tales. In Buddhism, the tales are called the Jataka Tales. And they're stories just as there are Bible stories of how the Buddha gave his life when there was a tiger who was trying to feed the cubs. And he cut off a piece of his side to feed to the tiger. Well, ultimately, he got devoured by the tiger because you got a taste of that and he had to feed his cubs. So he gave his life to save the tiger mother and her cubs. There are other stories of bravery and courage and kindness related in stories, in tales that children could understand of how to be kind, how to be brave, how to work together. So Buddhism has the same things and the same mechanisms to help people learn how to be part of everything and share and know that we don't exist in this world without others that help us to be who we are. So people now, with the high-tech mechanisms that we have, they could look on their cell phone, they could look on their iPad, they could look on TV, I still have books that I read to learn about things that happen in the world. The Buddha taught that everyone can be a teacher. You can learn from everyone. There are great teachers in this world, and we've been exposed to so many people who have shown us and done things that teach us that we need one another. We need to help one another in order to survive. This world has gotten to be pretty crazy right now. And if we don't learn to understand one another and appreciate that all of us are different, all of us need to survive, and all of us need to understand that we don't look alike and we don't come from the same place and we do things our own way, and that should be respected. It's very difficult because we have to learn that there's no them, there's only us.
Yeah, thank you. You've been involved in interfaith conversations, and obviously a big emphasis of the Abrahamic traditions is emphasis on a creator God, which, Buddhism doesn't emphasize, it seems, this idea of kind of a God that's separate. How has that been in terms of having that conversation when it's popularly understood that Buddhism doesn't have the same kind of concept? If how does one relate that? I guess maybe given your experience.
I don't have a problem with that. Buddhism and Jainism are non-theistic traditions, which means we don't have a God in our tradition. And people have said, well, who do you think created you? And what's going to happen after you die? I said, well, I don't know who created me. And it's not important to me. Things happened that the bottom line is I became a human being because my mother and father got together and their parents got together and they combined the egg and the sperm and I became. We don't know. It's called all things happen because of something else. And I don't know that I have to have somebody stronger, better, more powerful than me to say that I created you. I don't know. It's not important to me. What is important is that I am here for a purpose, to live. I'm not going to live my life because if what I do depends on whether I go to heaven or hell, it's not going to happen. If I die and I go to heaven, that's a bonus. If I don't go, nobody's come back from the dead to say there's a heaven or hell. And some people believe that, and that's helpful to them. Some people believe that there's something better someplace else. I don't know that. I know that I have this life. I have to live this life, the best way I can, because I don't know what happens afterwards. I have to make this life the best I can for mine, my family, my community. And I'm thankful that my friends who are not of the Buddhist tradition have that belief in God, in Jesus, in Muhammad, in other gods that help them to survive, because we need to have that ability to know that somebody else is there for us. Many people need to have that, and that's a good thing. I don't have any problem with the Abrahamic tradition. As people will say, some of my best friends are Christians and Hindus and Jews. And they're very strong in their beliefs, and I respect that. I don't know, did I answer your question? No? No? I did. Because people have to have a strong belief that helps them get through the day. People have to know that they have support. And if that support is a belief in God, that's good. Because we need that support. When bad things have happened, and one of my friends said, "Why did God make this? Why did God make this happen?" And I said, "He had a reason. And if you want to blame God, He can handle it. So blame God." Because people can get so angry and get into such despair in situations and they want to blame somebody else, and they want to find a reason why something awful happened. And I tell them, if you want to blame somebody, blame God. There's a reason why he did it. It might be because you have to become stronger. It might be because this was not that important. Go ahead and blame God. He can handle it. People need to have that backup, that support, and that faith to help them get through. And that's important. Any other questions?
How do you meditate in Buddhism?
How do I meditate? I meditate alone. I meditate at different times during the day because you need to be able to sit back, step back, and calm your mind. I meditate at the end of the day. Do you want to know what I do? Or the mechanism? Oh. Well, since I'm over 50, I can't sit in a lotus position anymore because it hurts. So I sit in a chair or I sit on a cushion and I close my eyes and I breathe and I focus on my breath and I calm myself. I can do this for 5 minutes, for 10 minutes, for 40 minutes, and then I'm refreshed. And it's breathing. Anybody can do it because we lead such busy, busy lives. And sometimes our mind gets so frustrated and we forget important things. But you need to sit back, close your eyes, and focus on something. Not everybody can do that. If you sit quietly in this room, close your eyes, you hear the fans going, you hear the traffic outside. Soon your mind will quiet. Thoughts will come into your mind. Confront those thoughts and let it go. It takes practice. The first time I did meditation, I was supposed to sit for 40 minutes. I was in so much pain. I thought I was gonna die. Another friend sat for meditation. He was in so much pain. Well, he passed out. And when he woke up, he said, "I'm enlightened." And his wife was a nurse, and she says, "No, honey, you just passed out." So it takes practice, and everybody should do it. Everyone should try it. There's different kinds of meditation. Quite frankly, when I meditate, I don't want anyone talking to me and telling me what I'm supposed to do. Just leave me alone and leave me quiet, and you'll do it. Thank you so much. What's this? Oh.
So, thank you so much. Here's the present.
Thank you.
Gratitude. We're so happy to have you here, and you've been such a help for us getting started.
Okay, thank you. I was going to tell you about the symbols of Buddhism. This is a lotus flower. It's a symbol of Buddhism because it grows through a muddy water and comes out looking like a beautiful blossom. That's one of the symbols of Buddhism, as well as a bell. Thank you so much. Thank you, Swami. Dear friend.
Okay, so that was Asayo Horibe. She spoke to us today about the Buddhism, gave very interesting, very simple, approachable, understandable talk about Buddhism. And I hope you found it very helpful. We're very grateful that she could come and be here with us. So, thank you. And I think they're going to have refreshments downstairs if everybody'd like to go.